Each of us read fairy tales in childhood, and each of us knows that every knight dreams of marrying a princess. But for this, as a rule, you have to sacrifice something. The princess of this fairy tale is now in captivity and awaits her knight, in the company of a dragon who guards her. As in any fairy tale, the knight finally appeared, and he entered into battle with the dragon. Looking at him, the princess was enchanted. He was so strong and so handsome that her heart fluttered. However, putting her thoughts aside, she called the knight to her. The young man looked at her. The princess tucked her legs under her and said in a thin voice that she promised the greatest reward for the night. Before us is a princess of the Asland Empire named Olivia, and right now she is saying that the knight has been given the incredible favor of kissing the toes of this princess. However, the knight quickly refused this, saying that these dirty white stockings with holes did not inspire confidence. Olivia immediately shouted that he was just pretending to be modest, and all men are the same, and the knight also came here precisely for this reason. The knight smiled and asked, "Does the princess really think that he came here for her?" While in the air between the princess and the dragon, he wondered how it was possible to put an NPC and him on the same level. Having introduced himself, the knight said that his name was San Kugai, after which he added with a smile that the purpose of his coming from the very beginning to the end was only this dragon. With these words, San Kugai poked his finger at the dragon. The dragon blushed and became embarrassed at this location, to the surprise of everyone else. San Kugai quickly dismissed the absurdity of the situation and stated that marrying the princess was not in his plans. After all, the most exciting part of the game is killing the dragon. With these words, San Kugai swung his huge blade, and he struck his blow, killing the dragon once and for all. Unable to bear the emotions, San Kugai screamed even in the real world. And he immediately got hit on the head with a notebook? It was his teacher who asked our hero if he really had a head on his shoulders, after which the teacher began to scold the boy for wasting his brain on stupid video games. He continued to beat our hero with a notebook and scold him for the fact that others are now improving themselves, while the hero spends all his time playing games. Finally, San Kugai couldn't stand it any longer and grabbed the teacher. However, he immediately let me go and asked me to wait until he finished the game. This infuriated the teacher so much that he, without holding back his strength, hit our hero. From such a strong blow, San Kugai hit his face on the screen, and suddenly the whole world turned into zeros and ones, naturally green in color. The next second, San Kugai looked around and realized that he had transferred everything to the game world, and he can't control his body at all. As soon as San Kugai found himself in a combined fall, he noticed that right in front of him was a dragon that he had not managed to destroy. This fall ended in a strange way. The blade that San Kugai dropped accidentally cut the chains that held the princess. When the princess looked up, she saw San Kugai kissing the dragon. San Kugai tried to get up, but he couldn't move, and the embarrassed Princess Olivia asked, "Is the knight really aroused by dragons?" San Kugai immediately tried to explain that everything was not as she thought. However, the princess no longer listened and apologized for what had bothered him. After that, she took his blade and ran away, wishing him all the best. San Kugai, meanwhile, tried to explain everything, but she did not listen to him at all. Suddenly, he remembered that right now there was a bloodthirsty monster next to him. As soon as San Kugai tried to get up to run away, the dragon cast fire from its mouth at him, because of which San Kugai, without strength, remained lying on the earth. And to think that right now he will die in this game. San Kugai was already fully prepared for this part, when suddenly someone stepped on his nose. San Kugai thought that he liked black stockings, and the girl tried to understand how this wretchedness took away his first kiss. San Kugai tried to ask something, but the dragon interrupted him and said that because of what happened, she had to transform into a woman. San Kugai continued to look up at her with embarrassment. At the same time, the dragon said that it was quite difficult for her because of her curvaceous figure. But when she looked down, she saw our hero looking at her with loving eyes. The dragon immediately hit him with her tail. She explained this by saying that she felt like San Kugai was laughing at her. Finally, San Kugai found his balls and grabbed her by the tail, asking who she thought he was. But as soon as he grabbed her by the tail, her face immediately twisted in unexpected pleasure. She fell to her knees and almost cried, while San Kugai tried to ask her what happened. With a blissful face, she asked how the vile loser knew about the place, the touch of which excites her the most. As soon as San Kugai heard this, he began to massage this place with redoubled passion, while the dragon begged not to touch her tail. San Kugai continued to stroke her tail and talk to the duck about how now all her impudence had evaporated somewhere, and even an evil dragon could not resist him. The dragon writhed with pleasure and said that Sankugai would pay for this. But suddenly Sankugai stopped because he heard the voice of the other people who were discussing what they had been told, that the knight had been able to defeat the evil dragon. Sankugai tried to understand why people were coming here while the dragon tried to move away from the unexpected caresses. Sankugai grabbed her tail and thought that it looked too provocative. While the dragon whined that her tail hurt a lot, Sankugai did not pay attention to this and decided that it would be better to hide it. He immediately grabbed her and began to tuck her tail into her clothes. He made it in time, just as people appeared, and one of them reported that the knight was saved. The king ordered him to be taken away. But when they went inside, they saw Sankugai trying to stick his tail into the dragon. The knights had a silent question on their faces. What kind of nonsense is going on here? Sankugai looked at them and tried to think of a way to explain this strange situation. However, the knights misunderstood everything. They thought that Sankugai had violated their innocent princess like wild animals in this dark and damp dragon cave. But unexpectedly, all the knights approved of this and ordered to continue in the same spirit. Inside Sankugai, there remained a question. Do idiots really have to be so idiots? When Sankugai finally came to his senses, he asked them if they had just called her a princess. The knights asked, "Is it really not her?" And then Sankugai ordered them to stop asking stupid questions, after which he asked, "Do the guys really not know what the princess of their kingdom looks like?" One of the knights thought for a moment and said that he had seen her once, and that it was just before she was kidnapped by an evil dragon when she was still a child. The knight came a little closer and said that after their personal meeting it seemed to him that the princess had become even more attractive, after which the knights bowed and said that they needed to go to the king because he was still waiting for them. He was apparently surprised to hear that he had just been called a prince. He asked again, and then the knight explained that Sankugai was now His Highness. After all, he is the one who saved their princess. The knight also said with a smile that Sankugai would now get everything he wanted, not to mention even a coronation. The dragon, meanwhile, raised her head up and declared that she was not interested in being a princess because she was the great and terrible dragon. However, Sankugai quickly covered her mouth with his hands. To the surprise of the knights who were watching this, Sankugai tried to explain what had just happened and said that the princess was very hungry so they should hurry. And finally, they all started to leave the cave. On the way, Sankugai thought about how unlucky he was in the real world. And then this complete trash happened. As they walked, Sankugai leaned over the dragon and said that she should cooperate with him now. After which he took her by the tips of the bridge and said that if she does not cooperate, then he will do so and she will fall into the web of pleasure. With these words, he began to massage her tip. With tears in her eyes, the dragon said that Sankugai was a vile pig, and even if he threatened her, she would never agree to this. But it was too late. Having reached the kingdom, the king arranged a dinner party. The dragon looked at everything around and even got a little excited from this mind-blowing smell. From that moment, the dragon decided that she was a princess, and that's what we would continue to call her. The king, meanwhile, looked at his so-called daughter with tears in his eyes and was glad that the princess had returned to him. However, the queen said that she remembered that their daughter had dark hair. As soon as the king heard this, he replied that it was not important at all and asked why she was worried about such trifles on such a beautiful day. Prince Lucky was sitting nearby and was saying that he was surprised that his little sister had grown so much, after which he whispered that if she left it like that, they would have everything they could wish for. The queen laughed and said that if he said so, she could rest easy. Meanwhile, Sankugai was trying to understand what was going on with this family. The princess tried to eat a piece of meat in one go, but she was told that she couldn't do that. A maid came up to the princess and explained that since she was a princess, she had to be elegant and refined. So she had to use a knife and fork, because that wouldn't make the chicken any less tasty. But the princess ignored these words and stuffed the whole chicken into her mouth at one go. Everyone was in complete shock, even Sankugai, and the princess enjoyed it. After which she pulled out the remains of the bones and smiled. The king was wondering how Olivia could behave like this, since she had even eaten several bones. And the queen was saying that she had been such a slob before. Sankugai was thinking at that moment that they remembered this, but did not remember their daughter's face, and it was simply amazing. While they were discussing this, someone broke down the door to the hall. The real Princess Olivia appeared before them and declared that it was not a princess sitting next to them, but only an imposter. Sankugai said sadly that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The real princess meanwhile climbed onto the table and declared to the king that she was the real Princess Olivia. Because of this, the king thought, again now there were two princesses, and it would be difficult to understand which of them was the real princess, the forbidden one. So he decided to draw straws. The real princess immediately asked how her father dared to say such a thing and called him a lousy old fart. After which she grabbed him by the clothes and began to ask how he could not recognize his own daughter. After which she threw the king aside and declared that she was not going to talk to a fucking son of a bitch like her father. When the king fell to the ground, he was surprised, because the manner of speech was terrible, and such an indecent tone only meant that this was undoubtedly his daughter. At that very moment, the king and queen surrounded their daughter and began to thank God with tears in their eyes for returning their daughter. Sankugai realized that the situation was not going well and decided to leave quietly. However, the real princess threw down her blade and declared that Sankugai had committed a terrible sin by beating the impostor for her piece of it and was still thinking of running away after that. And that is not allowed. When Sankugai turned around, the princess saw that in front of her was the very knight thanks to whom he had been saved. She pointed at him and asked, "Is this really the same pervert who sucked the dragon in the cave?" Sankugai immediately began to explain that everything was not as she thought. However, unexpectedly, the entire royal family showed their thumbs up and said that Sankugai was a real man for being able to seduce a dragon. Meanwhile, the princess was saying that it was hard for her to get the image of his romantic kiss with the dragon out of her head. After all, that moment was firmly rooted in her heart, and Sankugai, like a real bastard, seduced and abandoned the dragon. After that, the princess pointed to the dragon and said that Sankugai was having an affair with this rude pig who was pretending to be a princess. Immediately after this, the princess took the food from the dragon and ordered him to stop eating her food. The dragon could not stand such impudence and doused the princess with fire. The princess barely managed to dodge and immediately began to scream that they were a lousy couple, a condom, and a whore. After which she looked at the guards and ordered that the two of them be sent naked through the streets as punishment. Sankugai immediately raised his hand and declared that he did not set anyone on fire and that he had nothing to do with it. However, the dragon immediately replied that Sankugai was to blame for everything. After all, if it weren't for his threats, she wouldn't be here. One of the guards immediately jumped up and swung his huge axe. Sankugai narrowly escaped this blow, but other knights immediately pounced on him. Sankugai took a few steps back and shouted that he played this game for fun and not to die in it. As soon as he realized something, he immediately summoned his blade and declared that if they were doing this to him, it did not mean that he should also hold back. With these words, he fully summoned his blade and made one strike. The knights began to cover themselves in panic, but nothing happened, and his blade simply evaporated. Sankugai was horrified because, in his opinion, it was a game bug. But when he looked up, he saw that above him was the inscription "Disqualified Player." Right after that, the princess came up to him and said that Sankugai could only run away from the field with his tail between his legs, after which she laughed and added that he was overestimating his importance. Above the head of this Princess Sankugai read the inscription "Righteous NPC." The girl took the blade and rushed to attack him, declaring that Sankugai would never be more than a so-so hero. Sankugai tried to understand what was happening in this world and dodged the blows. After a few dodges, he fell to his 5th place, and the princess at that time said that Sankugai, usually an asshole, deceived such a pure and innocent creature as a dragon girl. After that, it stepped on his groin, causing Sankugai to cry. Meanwhile, the princess was saying that she would now finish him off with one swing of her blade. But unexpectedly, the dragon protected our hero. After this, the dragon tore off her clothes and said that she had put up with this for too long, but Princess Olivia was too annoying. Then the dragon changed her clothes, hugged our hero to her chest, and declared that Sankugai was just food that had fallen on her from the sky. The entire royal family looked at the dragon with love and wanted to be pinned down too. Meanwhile, the knights were trying to come to their senses and understand what they needed to do with the dragon right in the kingdom. After all, it was that same evil dragon from the Ravine of the Evil Dragon. Meanwhile, at the other end of the castle, a blonde woke up. An assistant immediately approached her and asked, "What happened?" The woman in front of the blonde was called Countess Eliza. The blonde asked why Alice came here. The Countess of the Holy Lands said that she had news from the Islamic land, and this concerns the dragon they are interested in. The girl slowly undressed and climbed onto the blonde's bed. She took the blonde by the muzzle and said that she thought the princess was really too afraid of this dragon, so she asks permission to accompany the queen to bed that night. However, the queen refused and fell asleep alone. When the countess came out, she saw another girl there, who complained that the countess had forced her subordinates to do a rather difficult job of collecting information while she herself was hiding here and spending the night with the queen. Countess Elsa said that nothing could be done about it, because after all, looking after the queen sounded like a rest, which is part of the duties of a countess. The countess smiled and continued to talk about how Louise should not be jealous. After which the Countess asked for her hand and asked to give the information that Louise was supposed to collect for her. However, Louise turned away and said that if the Countess wanted her to tell everything, then she should add sincerity to her words. Immediately after this, the Countess put her hand between Louise's breasts and declared that in that case she would take everything herself. Louise looked at the Countess with embarrassment, who said that she understood perfectly well that you had asked for a little attention to be paid to her breasts. After that, she looked at the portrait and asked if this was the knight who saved the princess from the dragon. At that moment, Louise was thinking that this countess had too much power in her hands. And the countess noted that Sankugai looks like a real pervert. Meanwhile, the dragon was wreaking havoc on the castle and the princess. With the help of his fire magic, the knights watched their duel and discussed that they probably should intervene. And Sankugai said that the smell of barely dressed girls from the locals really does cause addiction. The principal said that this noble knight, staring at the fighting lady, and it is really low. Then he asked, how can you so shamelessly stare at the princess's body? Sankugai stated that they shouldn't talk about it. At the same time, he was thinking that he wasn't too annoying, and if it weren't for his shaking legs, he would have gotten out of here a long time ago. Sankugai was thinking at this time that the rules that prohibited skilled players from hitting NPCs really made him angry. How suddenly he realized that everything was going wrong since that very kiss. Well, it's still better then, but it's still better than marrying a sadistic princess, which is what the plot somehow demands. Sankugai also thought that no matter how you look at it, dragons still have feminine attractiveness. While Sankugai was thinking about this, a dragon ran up to him and grabbed him by the clothes. She declared that she could not do this anymore because lust would now lead her to sin. Sankugai asked what she was talking about, and the dragon with a loving face answered that she really wanted to butt her feelings. Sankugai asked ours irritably, is she really deliberately turning him on with her subject? After that, the dragon turned around and started running away, saying that Sankugai himself should hold out, while she went to soak in the lava. Sankugai ran up to her and grabbed her leg, asking her to be more patient because he should be her food and she should take care of her food. The princess looked at them and asked our hero if he really thought he could come to an agreement with this dragon and the so-called princess. After which she took a gun and a shell and said that firstly the princess is a fake who hurt the feelings of a real princess, and even now the main character of this drama is a princess who will destroy the scumbags, so they must be ready to die. And this honor is to die at the hands of a princess. She charged a huge core and declared that now they would all die. The knights asked the princess how she was going to fit something so big into such a narrow gap. However, the princess was not particularly interested in this, and when she loaded the rope, she immediately fired it. Sankugai and the dragon looked indifferently at the death that was approaching them. Finally, Sankugai remembered that he was actually the hero of this story and summoned his Thunderblade. And then he immediately used the quick defense of the blood barrier. The dragon was surprised that Sankugai was able to save them, and Sankugai was glad that even if he was not passed, he could still defend himself. But immediately after that, the floor beneath them began to collapse. A system appeared that began to mock our hero. However, the dragon immediately transformed into her true form and saved our hero. She immediately looked at him and said that she didn't want to save him, and it already happened that Sankugai accidentally landed on her. They simply flew away from this smell after that, or rather from the ruins that remained of this castle. The knights looked at the princess and asked, what should they do? However, she ordered them to shut up and follow her. When they had moved quite far away, Sankugai was glad because, in his opinion, no one would catch them here. He stroked the dragon and said that it was good that she could fly. However, the dragon looked at him and said that she had not been able to fly since childhood. Sankugai asked what they were doing now. And then the dragon stopped flapping his wings and said that he didn't even know. They immediately began to fall downwards at great speed. Sankugai begged the dragon to fly again, but the dragon said that he was only getting in her way. And so they fell from a bird's-eye view straight into someone's barn, where they found themselves among cows who were clearly unhappy that they had guests. When Sankugai came to his senses and looked down, he saw a dragon beneath him. He immediately pounced on her in order to cover her up. However, the girl misunderstood everything and moved away from him. Suddenly, Sankugai heard someone's voice. The unknown girl said that, in fact, they don't work on Sundays. The white-haired girl thought for a moment, looked at the dragon and was surprised, saying that Sankugai came here with something really unusual. After that, the girl smiled and said that she was familiar with the taste of milk of many animals, but had not yet tried dragon milk. Sankugai immediately apologized and said that he was very sorry for the fact that they sold her roof. And he also added that they were not allowed to sell here, but were simply flying past. But as soon as he said this, she threw a cleaver at him. The farmer's wife got angry and asked, "Are they really going to refuse the favor of the most powerful merchant in the Islamic Empire?" "Do you really think you have 9 lives?" she asked. Sankugai looked back and asked, "Is it really possible that an imperial merchant lives in such an abandoned barn?" The farmer immediately replied that she lived here only because she slept through the exam on imperial business. But judging by her productivity, she was simply being traded. An upgrade to an imperial merchant was just around the corner. Sankugai looked at her and asked, was she just a loser who couldn't get out of bed in time? The farmer told him to shut up and said that he would sell her the dragon that day anyway. According to legend, an evil dragon can be kept as a pet, and if she stays here to live, then in theory she will be able to give milk. And when the Imperial Commercial College made an exception for her despite her past mistakes. But as soon as the farmer said this, she immediately noticed the dragon's passionate gaze. The dragon immediately struck her, and then the farmer began to cry. Sankugai thought it was just amazing how cool she was in words, but in reality she was such a weakling. However, Sankugai did not despair, because the scene before his eyes was quite good. While they were having fun, they heard a voice from outside. An unknown voice announced that Her Highness the Princess was here. Sankugai looked outside and saw some residents saying that our heroes had landed somewhere here. The princess immediately gave the order to search everything here. The knights went and started asking all sorts of livestock if they had seen a girl in rags and a creepy guy here. This made the princess angry and asked what they expected to hear from an ordinary calf. After which she approached the cow and suggested that it would be better to ask his mother because the child might say nonsense. The knight said with a smile that Her Majesty was truly incredibly wise. Meanwhile, Sankugai was crying because this wasn't really a harem game, and he couldn't take all these girls to himself, unfortunately, which made Sankugai wonder what the hundreds of female NFCs with great looks and personality were eating here. Meanwhile, the farmer said out loud with a smile that these were members of the royal family of the Islamic Empire. The farmer immediately started screaming that these two worthless people were with her. However, the dragon immediately tied her mouth with her tail, and Sankugai asked her to shut up because she brings them too many problems when she opens her mouth. After that, the dragon adjusted her hair and discovered that in fact the farmer is also an animal. She lifted her clothes and saw that she had a cow's tail under her clothes. Sankugai immediately grabbed her by the tail and thought that he was now experiencing too much awkwardness, but he quickly came to his senses and quietly said that the cow needed to be punished. Sankugai began to stroke her tail, which caused the cow to experience great pleasure. The dragon looked at this with embarrassment and thought that Sankugai was too mean, because now he was doing it many times more intensely than with her last time. Thoughts appeared in her head that she wanted him to do the same to her. These thoughts brought the dragon into ecstasy. Noticing that her tail had become wet, the dragon realized that the devil's cow had awakened in her an attraction that she had not felt before. Meanwhile, the cow asked with tears in her eyes, "How did Sankugai dare to do such indecent things on the holy Islamic land?" The cow said that the princess would definitely not forgive this, and then Sankugai took her by the chin and asked, "Will she really tell the princess about this after they leave?" Sankugai began to slowly approach, causing Cow to think that the man had suddenly become too scary. The worst thoughts were in her head. She thought that Sankugai would kill her now. But suddenly, Sankugai picked her up in his arms and said that he could take her with him. In fact, he had no righteous intentions, he just wanted to take the mulatto girl into his collection. The dragon said in a nasty voice that if there was no other choice, then that was it. I was surprised when I heard that the dragon agreed so quickly. However, inside the dragon was thinking that he would not allow this cow to go with them after all this hassle with the tail. Sankugai and the others walked out into the street calmly. And when the dragon asked where they were going, Sankugai replied that there was a small forest behind them and that they should hide there first. The cow was very surprised. She could not believe that these two did not think to kill her, so that she would remain silent. And I decided that these two weren't so bad. After a few kilometers, Sankugai said in a tired voice that the cow was really heavy, which made the cow angry. The dragon looked at our hero and said that she wanted to eat, offering him to eat a cow. Sankugai gave a thumbs up, and when the cow started wriggling and hitting him on the back, screaming that they were still real bastards. Meanwhile, the princess was furious that Sankugai and the dragon had managed to escape again. She looked at her minions and declared that they were the most useless knights in the entire world. The knights immediately apologized and offered to drink milk to calm down. You approached the princess and asked your sister not to worry because if you search aimlessly, you won't find it, and you need to come up with a new plan. The princess looked at him and declared that her brother had nothing but a stupid brain filled to the brim with rotten garbage for the fifth. Therefore, he had no right to open his mouth. The prince dispersed and declared that despite the fact that he was in many ways inept, the sunset in the understanding of women was not poison to him. He took a deep breath and said that now, for example, he could hear the smell of female hormones flying in the air. After thinking for a bit, he added that he was mistaken, and there were even two females here. The prince opened the door with his foot and announced that they were heading towards the thick forest. And he also added that if they immediately went into the forest, they would have time to catch up with them. The princess stuck her nose up in the air and declared that in her opinion her brother would not lie to her, after which she went into the forest and declared that the great princess would catch and return. The knights looked at the prince and said that this was a bad idea because the forest was on the border from the outside, and there were rumors that a bunch of passionate monsters lived there. However, the principal raised his left hand up and asked everyone for silence, after which he declared that as long as there is a principal, everything will be fine. He also ordered them to stay here and wait for their return. The knights immediately agreed and stated that they would be there, and also wished them good luck on their journey. The prince and princess set out together, but they had different goals, which was clearly hinted at by the prince's smile. Meanwhile, our heroes were lying on the ground from terrible hunger. The dragon turned away and said that if she had known that it would turn out like this, she would never have sent that damn cow for food. Suddenly, they heard the voice of a cow, which announced that she had returned. She pointed sheepishly at the fruit and said that this was all she could find. The cow immediately began to eat them. And then, as they say, they are very sweet. After which, she invited our heroes to try the apples. However, the dragon said that she wanted meat. The cow looked at her and asked, would such delicious fruits not suit her? The dragon said that this was just nonsense. And she was a carnivore, and only lower animals could eat such miserable food. The cow was offended and said that this was already too much, and Sankugai at that time looked at her fifth place and thought, where was her cute tail growing from? Because last time he couldn't see it. The cow, in an offended tone, said that she had just gone and looked for food with all her might, and that she was being humiliated here. And she added that if the dragon was so smart, then she should go and look for her own food. All this was better than offending an innocent cow. After these words, the cow sat down on a log and stated that she had received many injuries while looking for this food, showing her injured knee. As soon as she took off her pants, the dragon immediately grabbed her leg and asked her to bite off a little. The cow immediately ordered the dragon to back off and asked, is she really a pervert? Sankugai asked with a happy face, will they really fight again? He separated them and ordered them to go to him rather than enjoy each other. However, they immediately explained to him that no one needed him here. Sankugai on the ground said that he was talking about something a little different, and the dragon at that time said that she understood everything perfectly well, and Sankugai ran out specifically to be beaten instead of the cow, because he started to hold back and didn't want to give up the cow. Because of this, the dragon looked down with a sad look and said that everything was clear to her. They had been together for so long. But Sankugai had apparently already made his choice. Sankugai immediately stood up and explained that everything was actually not so. And to be honest, he was even a little delighted with the dragon. The dragon came a little closer and asked if Sankugai would allow her to join. Sankugai was surprised and asked where she wanted to join. The dragon looked away and said that she wanted to join in what Sankugai wanted to do with this cow. It dawned on our hero that she had misunderstood everything. The dragon meanwhile leaned over a little and said that our hero only needed to do a little bit, and she would already be satisfied. Sankugai replied with a smile that in truth he would allow her a little more, since he didn't mind it either. As soon as Sankugai said this, the dragon immediately pounced on the cow and asked why Sankugai had been silent before, because she thought that he wanted to eat the cow with one snout. Sankugai asked in fear how she removed her horn from her head, after which he added that he didn't say that he wanted to eat the cow. The dragon stood up and asked then why Sankugai allowed them to join. Meanwhile, the cow, with tears in her eyes, begged to let her go, because she did not want to be eaten. She started crying and begging other people to save her. The dragon looked at this and said that she loved it when prey screamed before dying. However, no one would save her. Suddenly, they heard someone's voice from the forest. Some girl was talking about how her companion should not think that if there was no one there, then he could do whatever he wanted. So she screamed that he was a vile scumbag and forbade him to approach her. Sankugai immediately recognized the voice and covered the dragon's mouth. They hid in the bushes and found those who were saying this. Meanwhile, the princess found out that her brother had been hiding his true abilities all this time, while her brother looked at her with a smile and said that this was not the imperial palace and she could not order him around. The princess loudly declared that this bastard had brought her here not at all to catch the knight. The prince looked at her and asked, what could be exciting about chasing fugitives? After which he pounced on her and declared that he called her here, of course, in order to show her really nice things. However, the princess threw him off and called him trash. Because of this, his face changed. He asked why she would suddenly take him by the most hated nickname. He stopped and laughed and said that from a very young age, she looked down on him. Every time she saw him, it was like seeing a dirty cockroach. Clutching his head, he said sadly that no matter how hard he tried to gain her favor, she continued to consider him disgusting. The princess took a step forward and asked what he was saying. And at that time, the prince asked, do you remember how she treated him all this time? Unexpectedly, he did not wait for an answer, and declared that now he wanted her even more to enjoy carnal pleasures with him. He grabbed her and said that if she became as dirty as he was, who would no longer be able to look down on him. Having torn off her clothes, he declared that now they would become trash rejected by noble blood. Sankugai looked at all this and could not verify that you really were such a freak. It was impossible to escape from his grip, as he said. He trained hard to grab the dragon by the nipples. Sankugai looked at all this and tried to think of what to do. After all, he couldn't fight with this because he was disqualified. But growing into this girl was also somehow not manly. The dragon, meanwhile, was thinking that grabbing this would really be scary for her. Suddenly, Sankugai thought that there had to be a way out anyway. But suddenly someone threw a stone at this idiot's head. It was the cow behind the fifth who stood up and ordered the princess to be released. Sankugai narrowed, realizing that he had no choice. Meanwhile, the cow was talking about the principle of flogging part of the imperial family, and how slow the inhabitants of an Islamic state would not allow the great princess to be insulted. But as soon as the prince saw her, he immediately blushed, because in front of him was a very plump box. The prince began to approach her and asked why the princess was silent in front of such a beautiful friend. She said that she didn't know her and ordered the cow to run away and not interfere in other people's business. After all, this guy is not the one she looks like. The cow smiled and said that there was nothing to worry about because if she couldn't defeat him, she always had a friend. With these words, she grabbed our hero, who at that time was trying to escape peacefully. She sat our hero in front of her and declared that this knight was capable of dealing with anyone. The prince and princess immediately recognized who was in front of them. They looked at him with disgust, which made Sankugai ask why they were so unhappy. After all, he had saved the princess one way or another, and she should show at least a little politeness towards him. Suddenly, the prince grabbed our hero and declared that he was a really stupid knight and not capable of anything at all, and only came out with his face. The principal raised our hero and asked her loudly, what is he hoping for anyway? After all, he has a lot of cute animals even without the princess. Sankugai tried to get out of the situation and said that he also thinks that two are enough. However, the prince squeezed his throat even harder and asked him to shut up, and then asked in a loud tone how dare he brag in front of the prince. After this, principal looked around and asked where his dear dragon was. Wouldn't she come to save him? Meanwhile, the dragon sat in the bushes and thought about how to protect her breadwinner. However, this prince could grab her by the nipples and she was too scared. When no one came, the prince said that he was leaving. She also despises our hero, a freak who can only hide between the girl's legs like the last scum. However, Sankugai stated that if he remembered correctly, the one who hid under his mother's skirt, and the one who dared to deceive the princess into this unconditional place and try to take advantage of her, was the trash prince. Hearing these words, I basically became furious. Inside, Sankugai was thinking that since he was disqualified, he had nothing left to lose, so he shouldn't waste his life. The prince clenched both hands and had almost finished off our hero. However, at the very last moment, Sankugai noticed that this NPC's status had changed, and he was now disqualified. Sankugai realized that apparently he was not mistaken, and in this game each character has his own role, and in case of abnormal behavior he will be disqualified. It turns out that this principle went against the originally established system settings, and now his status is disqualified, which means that Sankugai can hit him. Sankugai immediately broke free and began to smash the guy's head into the ground with all his might. Basically, I tried to understand how this was even possible and why he lost so abruptly. After that, Sankugai looked at his status and saw that he was experiencing a sensation, and he scored 20 points out of 10,000. After one more hit, he now had 21 points. Sankugai continued to strike at the skilled NPC here, and he became more and more purified. Sankugai thought that it was really convenient, because the more you hit, the higher the number. Sankugai prepared to do some more purification, but the prince was already giving in and begging him to stop. Sankugai looked at him with a smile and said that it was not a pity to hit bastards like the prince a couple dozen times to get a few thousand points. Suddenly, the princess unexpectedly killed her brother, and she began to beat his dead body with her blade. She did not calm down the situation after a few minutes. The cow who was looking at this said that the princess was not at all like the princess she imagined. Sankugai took the girls by the arms and said that it was probably better not to disturb her. But suddenly, they heard the cry of the princess who ordered them to stop. Sankugai stopped, and then the princess said that he never leaves wrong, after which she looked at them and, adjusting her hair, added that Sankugai was still as impolite as when they first met. Sankugai thought that this girl in front of him was really scary because, after everything that happened to her, she still wasn't broken, and it seemed that she was the biggest bug in this game. The cow, meanwhile, tried to scream that she was not really with them. However, Sankugai ordered her to stay put and not run away, because if they were going to die, they were going to die together. The princess approached them and raised her hand up, asking them to be silent. Suddenly, she put her hand on our hero's shoulder and said that despite the past, he had just saved the great princess, and it turns out that Sankugai is still a good person. After thinking for a bit, she also added that the previous misunderstanding had already been resolved. The girl smiled and said that since she was not as fierce and refined as the crown prince, she forgave our heroes. After that, she took off her shoes and said that in order to forgive, one only needs to kiss the great princess's toes as a sign of devotion. Sankugai realized that everything would not be so simple. However, the princess specifically set such conditions so that Sankugai would refuse, because he was destined to die since he saw the princess in a rage. But suddenly Sankugai took the leg and quickly kissed it. Why several more times? After that, he looked up and asked if this was enough. The girl slipped and almost fell from surprise. However, Sankugai managed to save her by looking into the princess's eyes. She, the hero, asked if she was okay, or her highness. She wanted to answer something, but Sankugai said that the princess was such an inattentive little fool that it was very touching and her legs were so tender and smelled like roses. Also, Sankugai added that they are a temptation for any man. The princess, meanwhile, tried to understand what was happening inside her, because Sankugai is now saying such terrible things. But she wants to hear them again. Sankugai took her leg again and said that she would make everyone's body feel good. Finally, the princess couldn't take it anymore and pushed our hero away, ordering him to get out. She started screaming that this was real disgusting and vile and also added that Sankugai was a scoundrel. Despite the slap, Sankugai was pleased, you see. He thought that everything would happen, because from a very young age she lived in a cave with only one dragon and did not meet with anyone, so she could not resist the attack of a handsome man. He thought about this while she screamed that Sankugai should leave and not laugh in her eyes anymore. Looking at the madness of our hero, the princess slowly stood up and decided that she needed to quickly escape from this pervert. Inside, she thought that she was a noble princess, and in the dragon's cave there were none of the troubles that there are now. But while she was running away, she accidentally ran into the knights, who were happy that they had finally found the princess. The knight immediately explained that the princess had left long ago, so they began to worry that something had happened to the princess and the prince. But when he saw the prince, his voice trembled. He asked, "Is he really dead?" However, the princess explained that it was not a prince, but merely the excrement of an animal suffering from diarrhea and nothing more. And this is absolutely not difficult for the prince. The knight said that he clearly saw that it was the prince's corpse. And although at first he took it for the huge excrement of an animal suffering from diarrhea, now everything was obvious to him. But looking at the princess's gaze, he realized everything and agreed that it was excrement. While she was strangling one of the knights, another one appeared who loudly declared that Princess Olivia had killed Prince Lucky. However, another knight heard something different and asked, "Did Princess Olivia give the prince diarrhea?" The knight who stood on the tree also heard everything differently and asked, "Did Princess Olivia really see Prince Lucky getting fucked in the ass?" The knights urgently went to the palace to report all this important news. However, the princess thought that such a turn of events would be to her advantage. The knights reached the kingdom and told everything. The king asked, "Is Olivia really telling them to celebrate 7 days of mourning?" But the knight suddenly took out a microphone and loudly declared that the princess was going to kill the queen. The next day, our heroes saw a wanted poster for Princess dead or alive, with a reward of 10 gold coins. The princess's status immediately changed to disqualified. The knights who brought this announcement stated that this decision was made by the king, and they had nothing to do with it. One of them said that if she wants to beat someone, she can beat them. Sankugai thought that he expected a mortal fight, but in the end, he only sees their pleas for mercy, and this is a real shame for the knights. However, Sankugai was glad that the accusation of a crime still led to disqualification, because it meant that now he would be able to fight against her if necessary. But now Sankugai didn't think about it, because being mercilessly abandoned by her parents would be hard for even such an unpleasant person as a princess to bear. Sankugai took her by the shoulder and asked her not to take everything to heart. He said with a smile that even though she was being hunted down to kill her, she should notice that her parents had chosen a very cute photo, and that this proved that they still loved her. But the princess was angry that she was in their hearts. She looked so helpless. She threw the notice on the floor and asked, "Is there really no limit to human stupidity?" After which, she tore the paper to shreds and declared that this photograph, a small spineless chicken, was also of poor quality and could only be used to attract pathetic old perverts who wanted to get something for free. After that, she threw away the torn announcement and declared that no killer pursuing her would ever carry out this order. But right after that, an unknown girl appeared behind her. The princess became frightened and asked, "Have they really come for her?" But instead of answering, the girl with blue hair pointed her bow with 3 arrows at her. The princess looked her death in the face and asked him if he really had to try so hard for some 10 gold pieces. Meanwhile, the cow assessed the equipment and saw that it was a bow made of crocodile bone and the arrows were made of porcupine spines. The cow covered her mouth in surprise and asked out loud, "Is this really the same lady?" After which, she noted that she should have recognized her earlier. These human fangs show countless bloody retributions, and the earrings of red flame filled with the spirit of resentment, even in the gray robe of despair, her purple eyes, like fatal stars that will not fall. They constantly broadcast that she belongs to a clan of hunters who made countless people cry before the option. Heikelin Beach Clan for criminals, and his heir is the only first-class killer who wears the teeth of murdered nobles as a trophy. A boar rider named Elena. Sankugai immediately thought that this was some kind of nickname. But if she really is as dangerous as the cow says, then they definitely won't get out of this unscathed. Sankugai looked at her status and saw that she was a legitimate NPC. Meanwhile, the dragon approached the little pig and asked, "What is she holding on to?" Sankugai thought that he needed to save himself, because he knew very well what the dragon was getting at. The knights began to doubt that there really was a murderer in front of them, because in their opinion, only an idiot would ride such a boar. They also laughed and talked about the fact that despite the fact that she is probably trying to maintain her sense of self-worth, she has probably already beaten her whole ass. They were discussing how she was acting tough, but she probably had something vulgar under her cloak. The girl heard all of this and was very nervous. Suddenly, Sankugai asked everyone to be quiet and said that they couldn't treat the future head of the Heigelin clan like that. Sankugai also added that one should not, out of the blue, inquire about the chastity of the fragrant ass of this defenseless killer girl. Sankugai immediately crawled under her cloak in order to check the innocence of this individual. After a few seconds, Sankugai said that everything was pretty good here and shaved cleanly. However, after a few more seconds, he crawled out of there with a stone face. The princess asked to tell her more. Is she really incomparable there too? Sankugai came closer and said that the cow was probably just deceiving them, to which the cow replied that her eyesight had never failed her. Sankugai said that this is definitely a deception because this girl has something that contradicts the title of a first-class assassin. These are panties with cute bunnies. As soon as Sankugai said this, she began to seethe with anger. Sankugai and the dragon laughed while the cow and the princess stood there stone-faced. But for the first time, he didn't laugh for long because a second later an arrow pierced his ass. Sankugai quietly said that his naivety had only just opened his eyes, and this arrow was unusual. It was a secret technique of the clan called the Curse of the Dirty Blood. The girl became seriously angry with indignation. Damn, she often came forward and declared that she came here so white and fluffy, but the thing that Sankugai got in the ass looked scary. The princess said that now she wanted to fight and suddenly, out of nowhere, a huge cannon appeared. The princess, meanwhile, screamed that she was ready to fight to find out who among them was the toughest woman here. Elena said that this was just madness and jumped up, after which she cast a spell to strike with lightning and directed it at our heroes. But Sankugai used a defensive spell called Firewall Elevation, and he stopped the boar that was rushing towards them at full speed, and also deprived the girl of clothes, leaving her in her underwear. But the dragon said that she felt very sorry for our hero because his ass looked like it had been bitten by hyenas. Sankugai asked in an irritated voice, "Is his ass really more spectacular than a wall of fire?" However, the princess praised our hero and said that it was quite a good job, after which she took out several huge cores and declared that no killer was her equal. She sank all these cannonballs into her cannon, San Kugai tried to stop them by saying that the princess's status was no longer green and that this could not be done. And as soon as the princess tried to shoot, she failed. And the killer ended up on the floor covered in slime. The princess tried to understand how this happened, and the gun apologized for the fact that everything inside it was broken. But the princess was not going to forgive and hit the cannon hard. She said that it was probably just normal diarrhea and nothing unusual happened because it can happen to anyone. After which she looked at our hero and said that now he must compete with her in the duel. San Kugai said that he was too lazy to argue with her, after which he took his girls and said that the killer had come for the princess anyway, so she had to figure it out herself. The inner San Kugai thought that he didn't want to be beaten and needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Inside, the princess was angry because she noticed that San Kugai wanted to merge and made a sweet face, saying that not only had they fought as partners but also on the shoulder, and now he wanted to escape. She immediately came right up to him and pressed her chest against him. San Kugai tried to explain that this matter did not concern him in any way, but he could not get rid of her. San Kugai started talking about how the fight was pointless because he couldn't get rid of her and decided to leave with her. However, the killer stopped them and asked if they had played enough. San Kugai used the powder core to raise a cloud of dust, but a killer immediately appeared in front of him and said that the knight was really very strong and she recognized him, so she doesn't mind fighting face to face. But then a dragon appeared in front of our hero, and I said that if the killer wants, they can fight, because the knight can't now. San Kugai immediately thanked her and said that he was of course touched by the fact that she protected him. But her words about him not being able to hurt him in the very heart, the dragon thought for a bit, and replied that she meant something a little different and simply explained that from time to time, he couldn't do it. San Kugai stated that the dragons do not yet know all of his abilities, and asked to attack because he will force her to acknowledge his power. Finally, the killer couldn't stand this circus anymore and asked everyone to shut up, after which she shot at everyone, ordering them to die. But the dragon ate all the arrows, and she swallowed it with a smile. San Kugai tried to ask how she was able to eat them, after which he grabbed the killer by the hands and asked what she was doing. Did she really have no conscience? The girl stood shocked and tried to understand what had just happened. And the dragon hit our hero on the cheek in a friendly way and said that she is, in fact, a holy animal of the highest level. And even if she swallowed the tusks of a huge elephant, her stomach would easily digest them. After which she immediately added that fresh piglet was still more appetizing and began to approach him. She immediately pounced on him, and San Kugai approved. The killer didn't want to put up with this and used one of her spells. The cow immediately stated that she was now absorbing the surrounding magical power. And this also applies to living beings, as you can see. The princess immediately grabbed the cow and asked what happened. And the cow replied that she herself did not want this. But with such a level of energy as she had, she was not able to resist such a powerful suction force. The dragon also succumbed to this technique and her legs gave way. San Kugai helped her stay in place and asked her not to move because he would help her keep the spell, after which he cast some kind of spell directly on her stomach, and he ordered to take a deep breath. After which, with a smile, he pressed himself against her body and said that now she should feel the flow of heat that was left in her body. The dragon was embarrassed and said that he makes her feel heat throughout her body. Meanwhile, the killer had already used her spell. However, San Kugai managed to place himself and the dragon under the dome. Well, finally the killer stopped sucking in the energy around her, and they all saw that she had summoned a huge monster. The strange man laughed loudly and announced that after hundreds of years of imprisonment in the abyss, his lonely soul had finally been summoned again. The cow trembled with fear and said that she had already explained to them earlier that her clan was hunting nobles, and history tells us that the once very fierce clan that was destroyed by the clan of murderers did not actually cease to exist. Their consciousness was trapped in the teeth that were pulled out during life, so they turned into deadly spirits used by the clan for battle. The killer announced that his name was Bluebeard, and San Kugai asked, "Is she really talking about the same guy who killed his wives in the Brothers Grimm fairy tales?" Bluebeard pounced on the dragon. San Kugai was immobilized. However, he figured out how to lift the girl above himself. San Kugai stood firmly on his feet and announced that the dragon refused to be Bluebeard's wife. San Kugai shouted loudly that Bluebeard should stop thinking about the dragon's ass. However, Bluebeard again rushed into the attack and declared that he hated lovers like them the most, because he really wanted to make a couple of dead ghosts out of them. He stood right in front of them and prepared to swallow them. San Kugai realized that this was a good opportunity and threw the dragon to Olivia. The princess caught the dragon, saying that she was not sure that they would be able to escape. Sankugai prepared to go into the mouth of this monster and announced that they would be able to get away from here because dragons can fly. And finally, Sankugai disappeared into the mouth of this monster. Once there, he found himself in the belly of this monster and declared with horror that it smelled incredibly bad here. He also tried to understand why this bony man was so soft inside, and also Sankugai remembered that he saw the inscription above this guy and it was red. And this means that he can easily hit him. Inside, Sankugai began to beat the insides of this grandfather, causing him a lot of discomfort. Meanwhile, the dragon began to cry because she thought that Sankugai had died, and the monster laughed and declared that such a worthless P-court did not deserve to send her. After that, he laughed even harder and announced that he understood everything and probably she still hadn't tried him out as a real man. When he had laughed his fill, he announced that she should marry him, and he assured her that her feelings for this sucker would immediately disappear. However, the dragon declared that he doesn't even have a penis, so she will never marry him. After which she continued to shout that he was so creepy that even a homeless woman wouldn't mess with him. She added that not only did he not have a penis, he was also passionate and his mouth stunk. She showed him indecent women and declared that a woman with high status in the dragon world like her despises descendants like him who cannot even have children. Meanwhile, the princess thought that the dragon and our hero were truly in love. The monster meanwhile began to cry and declared that it was too much and she had crossed all boundaries because no woman had ever insulted him so much. After which he attacked them in a fury and declared that she was a woman who did not know her place. His gaze changed tremblingly, and he said that the dragon was urging him to become damn obsessed. The dragon used its wings to fight off this attack and ordered him to die, after which its shape changed, and she used all her power to prepare for the next attack. She rose up and said that she was very angry because Sankugai climbed into his mouth first and not into hers. Using her flames, she burned the monster's body. However, the killer came down to earth and explained that Bluebeard died burning in the castle, so he was burned in the fire of origin at night, and of course he is not afraid of the dragon, because she did not even awaken her blood of a fierce dragon. The killer looked at Bluebeard and ordered him to finish as quickly as possible. Bluebeard said that such a beautiful girl deserved to die without torture. And then he grabbed the dragon. The killer looked down and said that she did not expect that they all turned out to be so weak, when suddenly she heard the voice of our hero, who said that weak people like to mock others because they are weaker. Bluebeard tried to understand who had just said that. Sankugai said with a smile that he was a ghost hiding in the belly of the Bluebeard. Sankugai summoned his blades and declared that having become a ghost, he could not simply stand aside and certainly would not allow Bluebeard to take his women. All these blades gutted the Bluebeard. However, Bluebeard loudly declared that Sankugai would not be able to break through his bone armor with his toothpicks. He tried to destroy the blades that flew out, but found that they were missing. And when Sankugai broke through under the armpit, Bluebeard cried out loudly in pain. Sankugai continued to strike and say that it would be a great pity to immediately kill such an old dick who gives him a feeling. The dragon tried to help, but an axe flew at her, which completely tore her clothes. Sankugai threw his jacket over her and said that he had only passed out for a few minutes, but she had already managed to lose her panties to this old man. Sankugai looked at her with a smile and thought that this is a good old classic called The Hero Saves the Beauty. And also, he thought that he hopes that she will not love him to the point of loss. Grow in the end. Even a tsundere who loves to control people cannot resist such charm and will begin to stop. However, instead of everyone getting up, the dragon attacked him and began to beat him, saying that he should have warned her that he survived. Bluebeard meanwhile chewed on the dragon's clothes and said that he really missed the way the lush legs squeezed his body. He spoke with tears in his eyes about how he felt such a cozy and sexual satisfaction in life. The last time was a long time ago. When he killed all his girls, Sankugai ordered places in one row because his desire and the desire of Bluebeard, calling him a stoned pervert. After which Bluebeard went through the attack and asked the knight to enjoy how he was tearing this girl apart before his eyes. Sankugai took the dragon's panties and asked her to wait, and Sankugai rushed to attack, dealing many blows, after which Sankugai landed calmly along with the dragon, and nothing remained of the Bluebeard. Sankugai looked into them and saw that his purification had reached 154. After that, he remembered that it was not all over yet and asked the dragon to hold on tighter. However, the killer easily hit him in the hand. Sankugai took care of his wound and thought that the girl was really fast and still didn't want to lag behind them. After which the killer came closer to him and said that it was obvious that Sankugai had great power. So she was interested to know why he had been playing with her for so long. Sankugai tried to attack her, But again the attack turned into liquid, and Sankugai said with a smile that he couldn't be harsh with her. But it was quite interesting to play with her. Immediately after, Sankugai used a wind spell called Secret Escape, and he disappeared, leaving the killer alone with himself. Together with the girls, he tried to escape from here as far as possible. The girls he carried were very pleased. Suddenly, Sankugai tripped and knocked everyone down. However, they did not despair and moved on. Approaching the cliff, the princess said that if they didn't get to the other side, they were done for. After all, the crazy woman definitely won't leave them alone. The cow already saw her running up to them and started to get nervous because it was really very fast. The princess said that perhaps the dragon could take them and fly away, after which they all looked at the dragon. The dragon slowly rose and asked which of them could fly, to which they immediately explained that in fact there was only one dragon here. Sankugai smiled and said that it was only her problem and there was no need to bother her. After that, Sankugai took off his pants and said that instead of worrying about what you will do later, it is better to do everything they can right now. After which he asked, who will undress first? When the killer reached the cliff, she realized that they had all already descended. When suddenly I discovered a house nearby, the boar immediately tore it apart. The killer approached him and asked if he was sure they were all here. But when she opened the door and burst in, then I saw only a little wolf girl in front of me. She ignored her and went to the 4 jugs she saw, the she-wolf meanwhile asking, is the killer somehow connected with that night? The girl started crying and said that this was the second time that day that she had been grabbed without a cafe or explanation. She cried and asked, did she really make everyone angry for some reason? The killer immediately approached her and helped her up and said that she was apologizing because she had unintentionally wounded the she-wolf, after which she asked where this knight had gone. The she-wolf explained that they asked how to get to the sanctuary and immediately left. Meanwhile, the she-wolf liked Elena's smell and jumped on her, saying that her sister was really wonderful. At that time, Elena was trying to understand when they managed to become so close. The she-wolf continued to talk about how all those who want to enter the sanctuary are extremely creepy characters. After which she pointed her finger down and said that such a fierce girl like the sister who exposed cute rabbits cannot be a bad person. When suddenly the she-wolf said that such a sweet girl like Elena, who was looking for death, would definitely be the first to be even more mercilessly crushed into pieces. Hearing these words, Elena's face instantly changed. She immediately went to the sanctuary, and she announced that anyone who harms the cute rabbit must die. With these words, Elena jumped on the boar and the girl asked if Elena wasn't afraid of getting pricked, to which Elena replied that it was none of others' business and quickly left. The she-wolf said with a smile that, despite the fact that Elena is a killer, she is still too naive. After that, she approached the friends she had hidden and asked, was the girl who had just been here really as dangerous as they said? Our heroes immediately explained that the little she-wolf simply hadn't seen her in action, after which Sankugai approached the girl and thanked her for covering them, and also added that he didn't even know why she did it. The she-wolf smiled and said that she did it just like that, because it's not every day that you can meet such a distinguished knight as Sankugai. She also added that the fact that they were being chased and Sankugai almost lost his underwear is really humiliating and arouses sympathy. She also added that this was the first time she had seen the legendary fierce dragon. The dragon smiled and got up very late. However, the she-wolf asked how they had come to hide with the rest of the people behind the door of the old barn. After this, the she-wolf approached the princess and said that this girl looked smart. However, the princess immediately grabbed her by the face and declared that she herself knew all her flaws very well and therefore did not want to hear them from others. After this, the princess approached our hero and said that this place was simply disgusting and Sankugai should find a place where he could wash normally. However, the she-wolf interrupted her and said that such a thing exists. She sent them her bathtub and said that they could use it and not be shy. The cow approached the she-wolf and said that she didn't really want to listen. However, she would like to know what advantages she had in the wolf's opinion. However, the girl gave her a towel with an indifferent face and said that during the sausage people should not fill their heads with empty worries and advised to take a shower so that the warm water would wash away all the excitement. It was a hard blow for the cow. After that, the cow turned her gaze and asked, is there really a wolf idol depicted on the table? The girl immediately replied that he was the wolf of her dreams, and the cow added that he was a regular customer of the milk she sold and that he had a simply wonderful figure. The she-wolf immediately agreed. But the cow immediately leaned over and whispered in her ear that he also said that it helps attract male wolves. With a sense of accomplishment, the cow went to the shower, leaving the she-wolf alone with her tragedy. Sankugai thought that women are scary because Although they may not look weak on the outside, they are actually capable of inflicting fatal injuries in the most unexpected places. That same evening, they all had dinner, and Sankugai told the little girl not to lose heart, because in fact, disappointment in an idol is a common thing, and moreover, girls should change them every day. The she-wolf replied that Sankugai was right, and that this wolf had indeed become her idol only today. After which, the girl cheered up and said that the gentleman knight turned out to be an optimistic person. She said that only with this kind of thinking can one tolerate the fact that his status is different from others. Sankugai was incredibly surprised when he found out that she can also see statuses. By the way, her status sounds like a nuclear good NPC.